Something something I hear from people a lot is basically like how could we expect with Ukraine, there's how much stuff going on, but how can things basically turn around in the course of this war? Because this is what I believe. I believe that war is corrective, and that when you fight in these wars, like it means that you're going to have to get your priorities straight first off. So then you get rid of these more superfluous and more degraded things that you might a country might subject themselves to, because you have to actually win and lives are at stake. So now you're more serious, and now you're gonna probably get on a more traditional setting or something. You're at least a more hard-nosed brass tacks sort of thing. And so it's just corrective in different ways. And you see how countries can kind of, or just people who fight in these wars, get like how it influenced them. For instance, like Ukraine, or also in the Middle East, where who are the people who fight the hardest? It's the Islamists. It's the traditional hardline. You know, frankly, it's like their version of like fascism or something. It's the most like hardline, like the people who are into like what their thing is, Islam or in this kind of like Arab kind of stuff. It's not like you don't just see like random Middle Easterners with just like totally goofy ideologies and just new things, and they're just fighting super hard. No one's interested in that stuff. Those people are the people who are doing other stuff. The people who fight are people who have these kind of ideologies, and then the people whose lives are at stake from the fighting tend to favor them more. Like in Syria, that's how Jabhat al-Nusra became very popular with their, it wasn't because the people welcomed their ideology. Is the people welcomed that these are the most committed to fighting. They were the most incorruptible fighters. They were piloting suicide, so they were grateful to it, and it's made them popular, and it made people more willing to accept their ideology. Especially after they saw Obama betray them, where he says that there's red lines. If Assad uses chemical weapons, that's crossing a red line. He's going to invade. Then there'll be repercussions. Assad uses chemical weapons, and Obama does nothing. So this discredits the U.S. and for most people, if they were interested in like being a liberal or being like having like a democracy, like they probably lost interest after they're stabbed in the back by Obama, and that's when they turn to these hardline Islamist ideologies, because those are the ones who are actually going to fight for them. And as much as people, oh, Assad didn't bomb anyone, then I whatever. We won't get in. But why would you do all these false flags when Obama won't jump in jump in for you? Makes no sense. Who's doing all the false flags when for no reason? Chemical attack. Anyhow, it's the same thing with Ukraine. With Ukraine, who are the people who are gonna fight for the Ukraine? And it's the Nazis or the people. Frankly, these are just the most patriotic Ukrainians, and these are right-wing groups and things, or there's however many units that are composed or militias, and in the actual Ukrainian military, they've officially like Azov, which is in the Ukrainian military, but it started as a right-wing group. These are the biggest patriots, and so they're the ones most willing to fight for Ukraine, because there's plenty of Ukrainian libtards, but you think they fight as hard as, say, the Azov regiment. They do not. Like, this is why certain people become more popular. This is why Azov becomes popular. You know, it's not the conspiracy. Oh no, it's Zionists are pretending that these are fake right-wing groups so that people will think that they're real, and then they'll join. That's not how this works. They don't just prop up right-wing groups because that's what people want. The right-wing groups are willing to fight. They're willing to fight for this stuff, and then they have that influence. So that's why, from the beginning, how many dissident writers will say this is what some people like Rams Paul and other grotesque characters like that will say that Ukraine is fighting for like the homosexual marriage and think it makes absolutely no sense. Ukraine has the same laws on and stuff as Russia, and Zelensky himself said we can't change. We're not going to change it because we can't, because the Constitution says we can't make changes during the war, so it's off the table. So there is no fight for that because it's already banned. It's not going to get unbanned. You'd say, well, then the U.S. will make them. They'll make them legalize it. The U.S. is going to make them do it, in exchange for this or that. Well, the U.S. isn't in a position to make them do that, because if Azov are the ones who are willing to fight Russians, the U.S. isn't going to say, well, you have to actually have like this ideology. They're just going to say, okay, well, we're not going to push our weird stuff, whatever ideological stuff that we might want to see happen to Ukraine, because these are the guys who we want this fight to happen. We want to fight Russia. Russia's also our enemy. So whoever's willing to fight, you're fine by us. It'd be the same if we had Islamists who are attacking Russia. I would say it's fine if they're not against our country. It's not like we have to care what they believe in or something. But the Republicans have completely blown all this, and conservatives and right-wingers, by, as usual, they give up on everything immediately, which is why the West looks like it does. Because these same people, the dissident writers, dissident right, and conservatives, useless, they have no idea how to project power. They have no idea how to do anything. All that they would need to do, because let's say that out of this war, let's say Ukraine wins and becomes like super liberal or something. That's the people to blame for that are going to be also right-wingers in the West, because it's from their total negligence and their idiocy and the ways that they've projected and their messaging and how their failures, it's all on them. So if you see like if there's ever like gay marriage in Ukraine, it's right-wingers in America who are to blame, and that's who's to blame for this sort of thing in America. It's because they've had their certain ideology and they don't. Because let's face it, did they even go to bat for this stuff? Did they even fight this stuff in America? Did that ever happen? And I've already died on those hills, and I'll tell you that I've died on those hills multiple times over, and I'll tell you that they did not, and actually they would only attack you, if you ever even resisted any of this stuff. But it's become their big thing is like, and they'll say, and Republicans now will say they hate America because or like conservatives and right-wingers because it's gay or it's global homo. This is what they'll say. But where did they ever even try to influence their own country or even resistance in their own country? They put up no resistance or no fight or no even say anything to the contrary. But then they'll just hate their country and hope other countries destroy it. because of this, ostensibly. This is what they say, and I've heard them say it over and over, and so this is a very cock kind of mindset, and they bring this to, and they don't care that Putin has the same kind of propaganda, because Russian state media will play in other countries, especially in the English language, but also in Ukraine. Russia has influenced in the past this kind of propaganda that's pro LGBT, even though that sort of thing would be banned in Russia. And Russians will always say, well, their defense for why Russia does it is, well, because we're trying to destabilize other countries. But even Americans will defend, like these right-wing Americans will defend Russians doing that. And say, well, they're trying to destabilize other countries. Well, then you can't really say that this is a war to stop that. Well, this is a war over gay stuff or something. Because Russia's anti-gay, and but Russia is pro-gay for export. So the war isn't necessarily for that, is it? Makes no sense. But the U.S. could influence. The U.S., say Republicans were in a position where they could have said, like, hey, let's defend Ukraine against Russia, but no, like, social agenda is to be pushed. Like, we're not going to put any conditions on any kind of social engineering for Ukraine. They could have easily done that, but they never did anything like it. They don't care. All they know how to do is lose and then complain about it. And this is how most right-wingers actually make money from their stuff, or is through just the agitation of how bad everything is. And then you have foreigners who actively work towards making things worse, but they're for that because it helps them. Because they want to complain about how bad everything is, not try to make anything better. As it is now, the U.S., the West has effectively betrayed Ukraine. And Ukraine, Zelensky knows this. There's a Time magazine article has made a big splash. And it basically said, Ukraine feels betrayed. Zelensky feels betrayed by the West, but they're going forward with it. Zelensky knows in his wisdom to not push for any kind of negotiations or peace, because you're just going to still be left with, this is what he says, you'll still be left with this explosive situation. It'll just be even worse. You'll just be dragging it on. So they're just going to keep fighting. I hope, so far, I'd say that Zelensky is something like God's gift in this, and it is a real blessing in that he's not going to stop fighting. Because even though the whole world is a bunch of pansies and cowards who are, they betray this country, sometimes you find yourself in a position where there's nobody around you who wants to do right or will do right, and so you have to go it alone. And that's the Ukrainian position right now. The Zelensky position is to go forward alone without anyone effectively backing, because right now there's no real backing of Ukraine. Even Republicans are saying, no, strip away all the, and we have a guy, the new Republican speaker is, this guy, these people are so conservative and so straight. This guy is a southerner, but it's like a Tennessee Williams kind of southerner, and he's evangelical, and this is like a Ted Haggard kind of evangelical. And he's even got like just everything's messed up with this guy who seems effeminate to the extreme, and but he's all about but this is what the conservatives are about. It's largely, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems a little ironic that this is what they're all about. But this guy, he wants to give all the money to Israel, all the weapons to Israel, nothing for Ukraine, effectively. So they're decoupling the funding requests, and Republicans are doing everything they can to make sure Putin wins, so that the Soviet Union is reestablished, so that there's a Eurasian empire, and that China and Russia rule the future, and America is a degraded second-rate power. And they're so far they're having their way at it, but this could be that's whatever. If America wants to act like that, whatever. I'm fine with you know I'm fine with that, because to me there's more important things than the United States of America. Okay, our country, our government's always been kind of stupid. Like it's always been it's not a holy thing, and we're successful for other reasons than our government ideology and our flag or something. And these are the things I could take or leave. Because I have higher things that I care about. I'm I'm patriotic, but I'm not super patriot. And but as far as Zelensky's position, like I said, he could be the bad guy now a little bit more. It frees him up, and he needs to think of routes to go forward that involve where he doesn't need to really care about what could be contingent on support. Like I would say that Ukraine should be turning it into a more global conflict. Just drag everyone else in. Just start fires all over the place. I think that's a smart tactic. I think that you could really play dirty. If you have their intelligence service, you have billions of dollars, you have all these connections all over the world. You could do some damage if you start to just play dirty. If you stop caring what other people think. To some extent, they might have already been at it with that, with things like the Nord Stream, which could likely, as much as people love to blame America, like Americans love to blame America for that. Like Americans, they'll insist they're not like traitors or something, but with no evidence, they'll blame America for all these crimes. Even though if America was like guilty of this stuff, it could have like severe repercussions for the country in a way, but they don't care. They'll bear false witness with their idiot conspiracy theories all day, with zero concern about having evidence or the truth or anything. So, but Ukraine could be more into it. But I'd say that we might see them go a little more hard line and maybe play a little bit less with if the U.S. isn't delivering anything, they still have Russians to fight. They have to keep this thing going on, and this thing can keep going on forever. Even if Russians their idiot plan, Russians will try to say, or pro-Russians will say, oh, they weren't trying to take over the whole country, or even though they attacked towards Kyiv, they'll say that was a feint, a tactical feint where we only had tens of thousands of soldiers and stuff get killed, and only all of our tank columns were obliterated, and like what turned out to be like a suicide mission. And even though like it was a big feint, a distraction. That's how much these people care about the lives of their own, of the Russian soldier. It's just some dumb pig for them. This is how pro-Russians think. Is like you would throw away that much for a feint. When why wouldn't you actually attack the capital and take the whole? Well, all we want is like 1/5 of the. That's idiotic. And what you're asking for is a Vietnam-like situation where you think that you can just maintain an arbitrary border but you have to count on the other side not, that they're gonna not ever attack over, in the end, you know, we made a border and the North never stopped firing on the South. And that's all Ukraine has to really do. As far as the Donbass and all these regions, Luhansk, the Crimea, any occupied region, Russia can say, well, maybe once they capture all of these regions, which they're still attacking it now, they could say, well, we're good, we've got everything. You just need to keep on firing at them. Maybe for now, because there's no more tanks and stuff, Europe is totally useless at being able to deliver these munitions and things like they say. They should be doing a whole lot more than they are. This benefits them. The whole situation benefits Europe more than anyone. Europe has everything to gain. If Europe gets, so even like even as far as NATO or whatever is concerned, if I was in charge, like let's say of the U.S., I wouldn't be that concerned about getting Ukraine into NATO. I would just make Ukraine make a personal alliance. This is a valuable country. It's certainly for Europe. If I was Europe, I would want Ukraine in the European Union, and I guess for now NATO would be what you would want because there's no real European defense. You need to rely on the United States for your collective defense. But if Europe took Ukraine, they would be very close to being able to feed themselves. So they would be very close to like a super state, like a European super state, where like a really united Europe that actually has power, not like just what we have now, where it's like an economic thing. So Europe has everything to gain. You would think that they would be more into this whole thing. They could influence Ukraine more, and also, as far as different people in Europe who have a vision for that, they should be able to see how Ukraine can influence Europe for the better. You'd want to see the influence of like the Azov Regiment and things like that on Europe. But as far as that's happening, maybe not. Whoever defends Europe, whoever defends the West, that's who has the right to rule it and to decide how it goes. Not we should never let in power people who don't fight for it. It's out of the question that, like, let's say we bring this war to a successful conclusion, that we should let like dissident idiots, dissident right, have a say in things. Why should they have a say in things? All they do is complain. They don't put forth any effort. They don't contribute to society. People who contribute should have a say, whatever that is. I mean, this is how I think things should go. But whoever, like, you make a huge mistake when you try to cut out the people who actually fight for the, and then give other people a say in things, on how things are run. It's very foolish, and you see how that backfires either sooner or later, but it will. the only way to do it, like if libtards are the ones who defend Europe, who defend the West, who pull us on, then they have a right to rule. I'm sorry, that just means libtard ruler. That means that they should run things because they actually fight and contribute to our collective defense and security, and they're people who are actually proven to be capable. The people who contribute to the war effort in whatever way. Not necessarily. I'm not saying that the people. I'm not just saying all the grunts should like. I mean, like that would be like a Starship Troopers thing or something, but or like all the veterans or something. I'm not even saying, but like all the people who are actually like contributing to the war effort should have some kind of voice in it, like, and should probably have a proportional voice in these things. That's just the natural order of things. In the past, you know, that's how you decided your nobility in things. It was you get knighted from not from being like Elton John or like something like that. Like you get knighted in the past from fighting in the battle. You distinguish yourself in combat, and then you're a noble, and then your children are also nobles or whatever. And that created, after time, that can create problems if they stop fighting, because fighting is corrective, and not fighting is just as, it's more prone to error. So in peace, that's how we see how we've gotten weak. But war would be where the good influences could come through. Instead, everything is just all messed up. So these are blown opportunities, more or less, where the Republicans could have influenced Ukraine in certain ways, but just as conservatives and right wingers and dissident writers and things have blown everything at home, they will blow things abroad in these kind of foreign projects, which I don't even necessarily think like as totally like foreign. Like when I think of like Europe or Australia or things, like when bad things happen in these countries, like I'm saddened by them because, or even like Japan or something, because these are like our allied countries, countries we know, and countries that are like our world, as opposed to like just random countries or hostile countries like Mexico and Russia and China and like those are like foreign countries to me. But like Europe is something that it's not like screw Europe. Like Americans are dumb with these kind of attitudes. Like that's kind of like our world. We should have some concern over it, some stake in it. You know, it's but it's whatever. All right, there's just some thoughts on how these things go and how some of the influence, how this kind of influence can be spread, maintained, or some of the political outcomes. Some of the I don't necessarily need to pursue every conclusion. You can maybe from here. I think you can think of different ways how this can go. How you can think kind of creatively, and that's the kind of leaders we need in the future, who can think creatively in like taking like not let like they say don't let a good disaster go to waste or whatever. Don't let a catastrophe go to waste or whatever. That's actually correct. I mean, this is how you do movement and things, because it's throughout a war and it's not like people will just live in peace and everything's going fine and then people become like they get all degenerated, they get all weak, and then one day they're like, oh man, look at us, like we need to get our act together, and then they just do for no reason, even though they're prosperous and there's no external threats. No, the reason people do this sort of thing is because of external threats or active conflicts or all these other um, conflicts or threats that can make you get serious about things. Not so this whole peace craze that people are into and peace at any cost. It doesn't make a lot of sense unless you're obsessed with the status quo. If you think the status quo is bad, even economically, because there are people, screw this. Why would I want to fight in a war when everything's all messed up and the rich people are stealing? Hold on. You should want war more than anyone. War is not good for trade and economics and things like that. You might think so. In the end, it kind of is, but not necessarily for if you're doing business. You might not necessarily, unless your business is like weapons and stuff, and you sell HESCO barriers or something. Then yeah, okay. Like if you're Boeing or something, yeah. But like for the most part, if you're just like in business, you're just not like you want all these wars or something. But in the end, it can be good. Like going into World War II, everyone was poor. Getting out of World War II, for in the U.S., it's different in Britain. They came out of World War II poor. But in the U.S., we went into World War II very poor, and we came out of it very rich. So if people were in the Dust Bowl or something, screw that, I'm not going to fight a rich man's war. You don't necessarily, that might be kind of a dumb attitude, because it was actually the veterans of World War II that built that elevated themselves to a middle class and passed that on to their boomer descendants and things like that in their prosperity. That's why baby boomers lived in prosperity. Did you know that? Is because their big competitor, like Germany and Japan, were knocked out, and then the U.S. had all this. They're for a while we're doing super awesome, but that wouldn't have happened without World War II. Like boomers wouldn't have lived like that. And it's not totally unreasonable if we have World War III. Our kids can live like that or something. This isn't even how I think. This isn't what motivates me, but because I'm not like, I don't care that much about money and things like that. But I see it as an opportunity in general where a country can better themselves in all this stuff. Not through just being a anti-war, dissident, peaceful. Nothing comes from, out of that. So it's better to look for angles to kind of ride these big waves of violence. If that can be, if that can happen. If not, it has nothing to do with this. But we're to the point where, maybe there is something to be, to get out of it. And there's certainly something to contribute, even though our people are unwilling to contribute. There is stuff to get out of it. And I think that everyone who is all about Ukraine and the defense of it, I think it is super cool. Even I don't counter signal anyone who's for Ukraine. Like unless what they're doing is probably gonna hurt Ukraine or something. It's like that stupid. But for the most part, I don't really counter signal anyone, because I see it as like this will make them better. You see, because you see certain people who, and they're libtards and stuff like that, and then and I'm not saying they need to stop being a libtard eventually. I don't care, but like I think it's like, for one, it shows that they have heart, that they got into the war and they're so into it and they care about other people. And usually it's out of a sense of altruism and a heart for these people who are under invasion, and they see it as a just war, and they see these as Westerners like them. And so, I think these are probably superior people, and even if they're libtards, these are superior people than the dissident right, who are more trashy people. But I think that the dissident right will only get worse, and you see all their rhetoric is just getting worse and worse and worse, and is actually more hardcore leftist as it goes by. Where the libtard, the libtard who is involved in the war and is maybe only in support, only in voicing their support, but you could see how they get more serious about military things, martial matters, and they become more patriotic, and they have a more collective sense of the West and what, in a pragmatic sense of what our nation should be doing, not just degenerating in peace. So it's corrective for everyone who's involved, is what I notice. And I think the people who are, like I said, I think the people who are already have a heart for Ukraine are superior, and I think those are the people who are going to get better out of this. They're going to get better out of the whole thing. The other side will get worse. So those are just some thoughts on that and on influencing Ukraine and getting some influence out of the war. Yeah, thank you for listening.